Thank you again, Jackie. So last week we had the APCM, and those who were here for that, or in fact during the service, would have seen the video with all the things that have been going on over the last year, which was incredible. And everything I say today is flowing out of that APCM. Okay. Last week we looked back a bit, and Martin reminded us of the motto and the mission of the church, which is love God. Build community. Yeah, I'd say that's about C. A for some, D for others, C on average. Love God, build community, transform lives. Now I want us to look forward. So we've looked back a bit, now it's time to look forward, and we're backing Mark's gospel to do that. And we've jumped now to chapter 4. So Jesus has been teaching in parables about the kingdom, comparing it to seeds and to trees, these symbols of growth, that the kingdom is growing. But it's been a long day. Large crowds have gathered. Jesus has had to clamber into a boat on the Sea of Galilee, the lake, to speak to them from that boat. And it's evening, and the sun is going down, and everyone is tired. It's been a long day with lots to learn, and it's now time to relax. So Jesus tells his followers that they're going across to the other side. They're heading on. It's a crossing of 13 miles to travel the length of the Sea of Galilee. Should only take a few hours by boat, I'm told. And Jesus falls asleep. Now, these Galilean fishing boats, they're not little English rowing boats. These are big old boats. One was found in 1986. They are 7.5 feet wide, and they fit 15 people. It's a big old boat, and there's room at the back for somebody to lie out and sleep. So Jesus and the 12, we presume, are in the boat, and then the storm hits. Now, most preachers would make this the point of the talk, going through life storms, that sort of thing. But that is not what I want to focus on today. That's not what we're looking at today. The disciples are terrified. They're overwhelmed. They think they're going to sink and drown. These are fishermen. They know the sea. They know the dangers of the Sea of Galilee. And yet Jesus seems to be asleep through it all. It's as if God is sometimes silent in our times of deepest trouble. But that isn't the point I want us to look at today either. Jesus is then woken, and he calms the storm. And the disciples are absolutely dumbstruck. This is what we're focusing on today. Mark 4:41. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. For me, that is one of the greatest lines in the New Testament. Even the wind and the waves obey him. Now here you could think about parallels with Jonah and the storm. You could look at Old Testament passages where it talks about God himself, Yahweh, calming the storm, or the waters of pre-creation. And we could think, what does this tell us about the identity, the character of Jesus? You can look that up in any commentary. That's not what we're focusing on. The experience the disciples had was not an abstract or theoretical experience. This was existential. They thought they were going to die. This is life and death stuff. So what they were experiencing was a moment of clarity and a moment of reality. Faith will always come to a rubber hits the road moment. Faith will always come to a rubber hits the road moment. There's a Greek word for this, and it's the word crisis. Faith will always come to a crisis. Now, in Greek, crisis is not a bad thing. A crisis is the moment when things could go one way or the other. It's a critical moment, a turning point, a decisive moment. It's a word used throughout the New Testament to to describe people's reactions to Jesus. It's a crisis moment. It's going to go one way or it's going to go the other. Now, this church, in the 200 years it's been standing, has had many crisis points, as any church should and will have. They come because it's inevitable. And this is the thing. We should welcome crisis points when they come. We should not be afraid of crises. We should welcome them. God, bring us some good crises. We can do with those good turning points, those decisive moments. But we have to get ourselves ready for them now. And that's what we're looking at today. Jesus had just talked about the seeds. You have to plant the seeds at the right time. You have to harvest them at the right time. We are in pre-crisis times. It's time to prepare for crisis. Not bad crisis, but the kind of crisis which is a decisive point where things will go one way or the other. In 1953, there was a popular Christian paperback that came out written by J.B. Phillips. He was a Bible translator, and in the process of translating the Bible, he had had a revolutionary experience of God. And the book he published was called Your God is Too Small. That's what we're going to look at today. Your God is too small. In the boat, in that crisis moment, the disciples came to a deep, profound realization and revelation. And they framed it as a question. Who is this? That's the crisis moment. They either acknowledge him or they don't. It's a decisive turning point. And many of us have been through that crisis in our lives. Who is this Jesus? And we have a choice. Which way do we go? And they also came to an answer to that question. The wind and the waves obey him. This Jesus was more than they had ever imagined to this point. This Jesus was doing the things that the God of Israel does. And the God of Israel does the things that Jesus does. Somehow, the God whom Israel had followed for generations was there with them in the sea, in the storm. This was more than they had imagined to be possible. And you could almost hear the cogs of their minds working. Our God is too small. Our conception of God is too small. Our relationship with God can change, and it can easily go through it. Naturally, it goes through these seasons, these times of intensity and the times of calm and quiet. But it's really easy to allow our relationship with God to start to go a little bit cold. We've been to the services, we know the language, we've heard the readings, we know kind of what the preacher's going to talk about before they talk about it. Yeah, we're Christians now, God, got it, yeah. And we can start to take God for granted. Now that is the death knell for any intimacy, as anyone in a relationship knows. As soon as you take for granted, intimacy starts to get colder and disappear. I wonder if we take God for granted. I wonder if we allow our relationship with God to get cold. I wonder if we allow our conception of God to get small. And somewhere along the way, I wonder if sometimes we allow the God of all creation, whom wind and waves obey, to be reduced in our mind to a God. So that our image of God becomes what we worship, and not the true God who's in command of it all. It's a big question. And then we're left with another question. Are we really serving the God of the universe or the small God of our own imagination? And there's a big, big, big difference. If we turn God into our image, it's safe. We're in control. But the real God is living and active and dynamic. If we have not been surprised or challenged or consoled by God for a while, maybe we need to check who we're really relating to. Because the real God is dynamic and active and doing things in this world. He's calming storms. But our image of God is a different matter. And in Greek, the word image is the same word as the word idol. Idol. Are we worshipping the true God, or are we worshipping an idol of God of our own imagination? It's a challenging idea. If we were really worshipping the true God with everything in our life, surely we'd come tumbling into church on Sunday, bubbling over with testimonies. God has done this, God has done that. In Luke 10:17, when the 72 returned, Jesus had sent them out to preach, and they came back tumbling and excited and filled with joy. The 72 returned with joy and said, "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." Because the true God is living and active. But if our image, our idol of God, has started to eclipse the real God, we're going to stop experiencing the activity of that real God in our life. And we're not going to have the testimonies. We're not going to see God acting. We've got to work this out, and we've got to check ourselves. So, how do we check ourselves? If we, and I know how challenging this sounds, if we come to church primarily because it makes us feel good, if we follow God primarily because he helps us, who's really in the driving seat? We have to get to the point where we worship the true God, not because we get anything out of it at all, but simply because he is God and we are not. And that means even if we don't feel anything, we are still going to follow the true God. So, this is the start. That's the start of discipleship, really. And we have to keep coming back to the question, who is this? And we can test ourselves. Who is our image of God? If it comes from us, our image of God will often reflect us. How many of us have an image of God as an angry father? And I wonder what it is in you that puts that image onto God. How many of us have an image of God as a distant, hard-to-please manager? Or somebody who's just waiting to catch us if we step out of line? Or a vague old man who's slightly forgetful in the clouds? That's not the true God who wind and waves obey. That's our image of God that we worship. We can think about idols as being kind of golden calves and this sort of things, but idolatry is a really deep thing in the human heart. That's why the Bible warns about it again and again and again. I think maybe the easiest way to think about it is the word idol has I at the start of it. If we are putting ourselves first, God, give me this, God, help me with that, God, look after me, is it the true God we're worshipping? I think the only God who saves, the only God we need, is the full fat, full force, firm, formidable, untamable, uncontrollable God whom even wind and waves obey. And we have to meet with him again and again and again. And we have to tear our idols down again and again and again. Now, as well as our image of God that potentially can become an idol, there are three key idols, I think, that can control our lives. And this is sensitive and tricky to talk about, especially because we're English. I'm giving you that warning now because you know what's coming. The three big idols: money, sex, power. Money, sex, and power. Look at just about every scandal, political, in the church, anywhere. What will they involve? Money, sex, power. These are the big three, the unholy trinity, we could say. That's why in the early church they very quickly realized this and countered this with three disciplines that disciples follow: poverty, chastity, obedience. Money, sex, power, poverty, chastity, obedience. And it's a simple test, I've already said it. Who is in the driving seat? Who is the focus? God or ourselves? So, very quickly, money. Martin talked about giving a few weeks ago, and it was a challenging talk, rightly challenging. The question is, do we receive our money as a gift from God, keeping an open hand for him to take it back again and to use it as he wants to? Or do we grasp hold of it out of fear in case we need and in case our own plans are not going to get met? Is it fear that's in control, or is it trust in God? Do we trust in God's open-handed provision or our own closed fists of fear? I warned you it was coming. Now we're going to talk about... Okay. Sex. A little awkward. Same principle. Do we receive sex as a blessing from God within the bounds of his provision, a committed marriage that reflects and represents the difference between man and woman, God and creation, and the final unifying and securing of what is diverse into what is united as one? Or do we take it as something we need or we have a right to, or something we tell ourselves we really deserve? Are we holding tighter to another person than we are to God? Or are we searching out sex in whatever form? If we are searching it out in pornography, in illicit thrills, where we ultimately end up alone and wrapped up in ourselves instead of being opened into community, are we receiving from God, or are we taking for ourselves? It's a big test. And power. Does power sit on us lightly if we're giving it? Is it something that we can use for the good of others, to protect and to serve and to improve others' lives? Or is it something we need to fill a hole in ourselves and make ourselves feel more important? Again, are we receiving or are we taking? For all three, there's another fundamental question. Is there anybody here who's being used? Whether it's money, sex, or power. Anywhere in the chain, are humans being turned into objects and being used and treated as things for my benefit? God does not use in that way. Love does not use in that way. Love sets free. So, those are the three idols. The disciplines: poverty, chastity, obedience. What do they mean to us now, 21st century people, who, if we're honest, we're not poor. Most of us are not poor. But what do these poverty, chastity, obedience mean? I wonder if we find money is taking a hold of us, we have to counter it by giving and giving and giving. If we find sex is starting to take hold of us, we have to counter it by looking only to the other person's well-being, to their best interests, their wholeness of health, seeking nothing back for ourselves. And if power is trying to take hold of us, then we have to start quickly serving anonymously, where we'll get no praise, no thanks, no notice. We are serving because we are followers of a God who serves. We have to dethrone the idols in our lives. We have to. I wonder sometimes about, it shows itself in our prayers sometimes. How much are we praying for nice weather for our picnic or a parking place for our car, when the whole of creation is yearning for release and looking to us, and we're praying for a nice picnic and a parking space for our car? There's nothing wrong with praying for those things, but again, what is the focus? Is it me or is it him? Now, the big God that we serve, if we realize what we've been given, we wouldn't look anywhere else. The big God we serve in Romans 8 has told us the power at work in us is the same power that raised Jesus from the dead, The Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you. The same thing in Ephesians. That power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms. That should shock us into submission to the true God. The Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is working in us. The power that broke open the tomb is working in you. The power that created the world, that brought all this about, that holds it in its hand, that same power is here in this church. The Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead. Idols can't do that. Idols will keep us comfortable. I don't say this in a bad way. Your comfort is not God's primary concern. He's got bigger things on his mind. If we're still praying for our comfort, which God are we praying to? Because God has plans for this place. He has plans for his church. He has people out there that he wants to touch. People who need him. He has addictions that he wants to break. Relationships he wants to restore. Illnesses he wants to heal. And we're praying for a parking space. We need a bigger vision of our God. Much, much bigger. And I wonder if we saw God working in this place. We do see God working in this place, but I mean, if we saw him fully working, if all of us, if all of our lives were fully given over to the true God, what would be happening in this place? I would love to see that. I would love to see it. But it would bring a crisis, because it's a moment of decision. How would we feel if this church was bubbling over with life? If every week 5 new people came? That would mean 20 new people every month. 260 people a year, new. 1,300 people in 5 years, that would be. And what if they came with all their problems? What if they weren't nice middle-class people who knew how to behave in church? What if they had their addictions and their issues, but they had met the true God because they had seen him working in us? How would we feel if this was happening in this church? Would we maybe go somewhere a little bit quieter, a little bit more comfortable? Or Would we stand and say, even the wind and the waves obey this God? We need a bigger vision of our God. We need to be receiving from him daily, checking ourselves all the time. Who is it we are really worshiping? Our image of God, or the true God who wind and waves obey? I'd like you to stand with me, and I'm going to pray over you the words from Ephesians. And while we're doing this, I'm praying for a holy crisis in this church. Crises are not bad. When you meet someone for the first time, a romantic partner, that's a crisis. Who is this? That's a crisis. When you marry, that's a crisis moment. Everything's going to change. When you have a child, that for sure is a crisis moment. There's a before and there's an after. You hit that moment, you've got to jump one way or the other. I pray we'll have holy crises in this church where God is active and we have to decide, do we go with this with all the fear that might involve, or do we retreat? I pray we'll worship the true God and see him working. So let's pray these words from Ephesians. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparably great power for us who believe. That power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms, far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, and every name that is invoked, not only in the present age, but also in the age to come. Amen. Wind and waves obey him. If you want to pray a real God-centered prayer, God, what are you doing? What do you want me to do? Step one, come to the chapel here. Come to the front. Stay where you are even. Look to the real God. Encounter next week. Come to encounter. Encounter the true God. Let's have the music.